Thank you for being with us today. When you give a work permit to one of your international students that has been certified in Quebec, what level of government does the medical examination occur, or a look at the police records? Of course, it's an easy question, isn't it? Thank you very much for your question.
An international student who's currently in Quebec who's applying for a work permit.
OK, j'espère que ça se passera pas comme ça.
I don't have a lot of time, but when you give a permit to an international student, which level of government has the responsibility and the authority to ask for a medical certificate or an international police records check? If it's the federal government, OK. We won't lose time over that. It's not the responsibility of the provinces, and it's not the responsibility of the universities. You agree on that? Yes, because I've just heard that abuses was because of the provinces and universities once again. Last week there was a report of an inquiry on what was being used in the for work permits on by an international criminal organization. Did you happen to read that article or review? Yes. Good. I don't lose lots of time each time I ask a question. So the reply of IRCC with respect to that report was that the situation was catastrophic. It was a provincial situation and the responsibility of the universities. Are you putting the blame? You're laying it on the universities and provinces when, in actual fact, it's a work permit that is governed by the federal government. Is this a matter of bad faith? Thank you for your question.
Is responsible for assessing the eligibility and admissibility of workers, students, and other people foreign nationals who want to come and travel to Canada. So we do that in accordance with the legislated requirements for eligibility and admissibility. We ensure that they are not, excuse me, with the information that is available to us at the time, the officer assesses to ensure that they are not a threat to the security of Canada, the health of Canadians, that they have no criminal background in terms of the information that's provided to us. And we do the assessment where the officer then determines that the individual is not inadmissible. When they do come to Canada, the activities of the foreign national after arriving into Canada and their compliance with the student permit or work permit is a responsibility of IRCC, joint responsibility with ESTC with regards to work permits. But any other activity, whether it may be criminal and otherwise, would be under the purview of our enforcement partners, such as CBSA or RCMP.
OK. Pour rentrer au Québec, ces criminels-là, souvent...
To come into Quebec, often these criminals are between 20 and 30 years of age, and they've sort of slipped in. Many of them get a study permit for the universities in the area. According to the Detective Sergeant Dubert, he said that we found that there was a system to bring in these students. After they're in, are you aware of this, that this type of situation exists? Are you aware in your department that it does?
Do work very closely again with our enforcement partners as well as police services across the country. So when we are made aware of criminal activity or fraud trends that link to immigration, that link to potentially foreign nationals coming into Canada, we're able to assess and determine whether or not we can identify those trends in future applications. We do have now measures in place, as my colleague mentioned, like the letter of acceptance verification, which has, since it's been in place, identified over 14,000 potentially fraudulent letters of acceptance, where we're able to then refuse applicants who are not genuine students coming into Canada. We also rely on our post-secondary institutions or our provinces to tell us when students are not complying and not attending school.
Est-ce qu'il y a un mécanisme d'IRCC?
Does IRCC have a mechanism or a tool that if a university has a student presently of following courses, is there some sort of tool where if that exists where this could be dealt with? And if so, what is it?
Where it's been in place actually since 2016, and in 2024 it was made mandatory. So all of the provinces are on board right now. We are working with the province of Quebec to onboard. So twice a year, all of the designated learning institutions must let us know whether or not an individual who has entered Canada on a student permit has actually registered and is attending school. And they will send us that information back so we can determine whether or not students are in compliance. So
Et donc, si les universités, tout le monde se met à alerte.
If the university alerts you that there is an international student that hasn't registered, say, that criminal network exists, it represents $500 million in terms of car theft and all kinds of threats and the difficulties. So it seems to me something isn't working. So
Canada, as foreign nationals, as students, are compliant and are students according to our spring assessment. So we do the verification with the designated learning institutions twice a year. We do it in the spring and fall. And according to our spring data, 91% of the students that were reported on were compliant, were registered and in school. 8% were potentially non-compliant, which means there's further activities that we need to do to look into, whether there could be an administrative error. IRCC also conducts 2,000 investigations a year for students who are potentially non-compliant.
Merci, Monsieur Duceppe.
Thank you, Mr. Duceppe.
Si
But if 15 seconds after each of my replies to answer my question, it goes far less quickly than it happens in English. So I think you're going to have to find a solution when you pass from English to French. It can go very quickly, bing bang, where you're using one language. But for me, when you're switching languages, there is a few second delay always with the interpretation. And if that's taken away from my time, it's a problem.
An extra minute, and I will keep on accommodating. Thank you, Monsieur Duceppe. Okay, we're into our second round, and our first questioner is Mr. Pierre Paulus. S'il vous plaît.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ladies. My colleague from the Block Quebecois asked you a question earlier about the reporting on Télévision du Nord and Radio-Canada. There are students come in from Africa, from the Ivory Coast and elsewhere that are participating in this type of fraud, criminal network, and there is an impact to it. Earlier, you spoke about process. You spoke about the second evaluation that occurs. I'm wondering how it can be that these individuals, these criminals, are not detected once they come into the country. Madame Zofar?
The officer who is making the decision for admissibility into Canada is making that decision based on the information that's provided to them. So first they will look at the application. They will collect biometrics, so that's fingerprints to identify that the individual is who they say they are. We actually do information sharing as well with our international partners to see if there's any derogatory information on that client or that applicant, and if there's any indicators of elevated risk, so potentially criminal activity, national security concerns, that file will be referred to our public safety partners at the Canada Border Services Agency and CSIS. So the officers are doing everything in their power to make sure that they are satisfied that an individual, when they're applying, is not criminally or otherwise inadmissible to Canada. Once they're in Canada, it is challenging to predict their behavior. However,
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask a second question at the present time. How many people are here in Canada, on Canadian territory, on study permits, but have been found guilty of fraud? Can you tell me the number of these people? How many have been found guilty, and what's happening to them?
Merci pour la question. That's a challenging question to answer, depending on the type of fraud we're looking at. If your question, Madam Chair, is for the fraud in the student program, so they were misrepresenting themselves as students and then found as non-genuine students. We have that data. I don't have it in front of me right now. If there's criminal fraud, that would be a matter that we would have to rely on our police partners.
Il y a combien de faux étudiants?
Yeah, but how many false students, fraudulent students are there? Do you know?
We do have numbers from 2023, if I recall correctly. There was about 1,500 students that potentially were implicated in fraud. Those investigations were undertaken by the CBSA. Not all of them were eventually found to have committed fraud, but it was under the...
Dans le reportage, on a mis l'accent.
In that report, they stressed what Radio-Canada called the African mafia. I asked a question about that to the minister, but I was called racist. But this is a matter of public safety, is it not? There is a specific problem in Quebec because of the language, so people from the Ivory Coast come to Quebec supposedly to study, but actually carry out criminal activity. Are there other areas in Canada that you are aware of where this fraud occurs? Is it peculiar to Quebec?
I don't know if there's other areas where it occurs as frequently as you're reporting, Madam Chair. We do, however, have what we call indicator packages that our officers use. They're provided by our public safety partners. These indicator packages are specific to different regions of the world or different cohorts that will identify specific indicators for our officers to look for when we get applications related to that region or that cohort. So when we receive this type of information from our police and law enforcement partners, we do update those for our officers.
1 minute, Mr. Paul Hughes.
Dans le reportage, ma question est...
In the report for Ms. Gill, in the Radio-Canada report, they talked about victims who tried to alert the authorities to the fraud that was ongoing, but they didn't get any access. I would imagine the first ones they contact is the police, but is it possible that immigration agents would be alerted and to get some answers? Because very often it's vacuum. Nothing happens.
We do have a tip line. We do have information that is provided to IRCC from either anonymized individuals or people who are bringing information forward. All of those tips are investigated. We also get information from our police partners and law enforcement partners, but we take every tip or incident seriously, and we will look into that to the best of our ability.
To be able to settle a problem, first of all, you have to be able to name the problem. There's an international criminal network that's making many victims in Quebec, $500 million of criminal income because of that, and it goes elsewhere. That money specifically is under the IRCC's student program. It's using it to achieve its ends. Are you aware of that in your department or not?
I personally don't have the details of the criminal investigation that you're referring to. However, what we do is when there is indications that foreign nationals have come into Canada and committed crimes, CBSA, the RCMP, and local police will investigate those crimes. Any information that is relayed to us, and we do have relationships with those organizations, we will then use to ensure that we don't provide permits in the future to individuals with the same characteristics.
Madame la Présidente, au début du comité,
At the very beginning of the committee, Madam Chair, I asked the witnesses if they had seen the report on that inquiry last week, and they said yes, they had. They did. So I'm going to repeat it. Did you see it?
Details about the criminal investigation other than what's in the report.
dans le reportage de 1 heure.
That hour-long report that inquiry, there was specifically stated that the criminal organization was using IRCC programs to produce criminal outcomes worth $500 million for other purposes. I'm not just here to say things. I want to settle the situation. If you are not able to say that there is a problem within your department specifically attached to a specific program in your department, how can you say then that there is no problem if you don't give it a name?
Mr. Fragiscaros, point of order.
I have immense respect for our colleague, and he's an experienced member of this committee in particular, but he will have the opportunity to ask the minister questions that are probably more political in nature rather than putting officials in I think, a difficult position to share their opinion on policy.
Not a point of order, Mr. Fragiscaros.
Je peux répondre au point d'ordre, j'imagine?
Yes, another one.
Can I answer can I answer the point of order? When a spokesperson of the Department for Immigration responds to that report, to any report, I think I'm entitled to ask that so-called spokesperson questions, and that person is here today, so I think I'm fully entitled to ask questions of this nature.
30 seconds, if you want to take it.
Il n'y a personne qui a répondu à ma question.
Yeah, but nobody's answered my question yet. Is there a problem or not?
Chair, while I'm aware of the report, I did not watch the full 1 hour investigation, so I don't have all of the details. I am aware of the report. We are certainly seized with any type of abuse or fraud in our program, and we take that very seriously. And any information that we can glean, whether it's through open source information, through media reports, through our law enforcement partners, we do take that and ensure that we are closing any gaps and addressing any future potential fraud or abuse of the immigration program. But I will say that the vast majority of individuals, whether students, workers, visitors, or permanent residents who apply and do enter Canada, are honest, do not abuse, and do not defraud the system. But where there are the small percentages that do, we take that very seriously.
Thank you, Ms. Zafar. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you for being here. I know our questions have been difficult ones. You said that you received a summary of the report, of the reporting. At least that's what I understand. I think that Émission Enquête is a really big deal in Quebec. It was the first of the new season last week. So that's an enormous scandal in Quebec. It was your department's answers were not much appreciated by the universities or the government of Quebec. So I invite you to reflect on what you see and take a good look at that particular show. Before this report, were you aware of the fact that there were criminal activities here in Canada?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I am aware that there are criminal activities happening in Canada, some of those undertaken by fraud.
De ce réseau-là particulièrement, est-ce que vous
That particular network, though, I'm wondering about. Did you know them?
Parfait. À ce moment-là, selon vous, quels outils IRCC...
What tools, then, would you think would be good ones to develop and to deal with this type of network? It was an extraordinary journalist that prepared that particular show, that report, and reporting. But you want to have tools to be sure that this type of situation never reoccurs again, so that there would be all these hundreds of victims that have suffered because of the scam. Some people lost their life savings, some $300,000. So what tools can you develop to prevent this again?
The measures that we talked about today will help. Unfortunately, sometimes the negative results that we see from foreign nationals entering Canada, if they have committed some type of fraud, happen after, maybe 6 months to a year after the permits have been issued. So there's always a lag time in terms of what we actually see resulting. We're, from an immigration's perspective, able to take that information and, as I mentioned, feed it back into the system so we're not bringing in or allowing foreign nationals to come in with similar intentions intentions or characteristics. When something like this happens, we do work very closely with our law enforcement partners. I myself attend various Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police committees, where if there are immigration links, we're able to see how can we take the law enforcement or criminal information and improve our systems and our processes. So there is that continuous conversation.
Donc, si on développe de nouveaux outils, ça veut dire...
So if you develop the tools, that means that...
Thank you, Monsieur Duceppe. I think we're at above time.